Okay, and welcome to Hat Trick Sports Talk. We are recording this at around 1:12 p.m. Pacific on Thursday. Back-to-back shows again this week. I am as always, with my good buddy Cole Hinkel. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing great. I'm glad to be on today.
New setup for this week?
Yeah, no Niners flag. I know some of you viewers really miss it, but
Uh,
different location, a little more professional today.
that's not the reaction I get, even from our crew that works
Yeah.
on this show, even from Shane and Brendan. Like, why do you have a Niners flag back there?
Oh,
I think people are going to be happy that it's not there. I'm fine with it back there, but I think a lot of people are
it's all right.
not.
I know you guys are gonna miss it this week. It'll be back next week, though. I promise you guys. I don't want you guys to go too long without seeing it.
All right, awesome stuff. Awesome. We are starting with some NFL. We're going to go more in depth tomorrow with Shane and Brandon about trade deadline day, or excuse me, tag deadline day. But we did want to talk about Dak because this is kind of the big story coming out of yesterday. Dak Prescott was involved in last-minute negotiations with the Cowboys yesterday, according to NFL Media's Jan Slater. The updated terms were 33 to 35 million with 110 mil guaranteed. So here's the entire process of the afternoon updated from what I saw yesterday. I saw a different version yesterday. This is sort of my understanding based on the research that I've seen, based on the reports that I've seen about what happened yesterday between the Cowboys and Dak's camp. So they met twice.
Hmm.
They met twice yesterday to discuss the contract. Um, Around, let's say, I don't know, 12:20, 12:30. From what I can tell, the Cowboys came to Dak with this contract, 33. I imagine about 35 million with 110 mil guaranteed. It's a 5-year deal. They gave him a 5-year deal. Dak and his team weren't happy about that. Uh, Based on what I can tell, they either wanted 40 mil or more specifically, they only wanted 4 years. So they wanted the same amount of money, but 4 years, not five, from what I can tell. They tried to rush back with about 20 minutes left to try to figure out, to try to see basically if they can change the years. They couldn't get it done. It was too late. They hit 1 o'clock Pacific time. It's over. He's playing under the tag. Then 10 minutes later, I thought this was actually during that process. This is actually 10 minutes later. Dak's brother said, "There's a reason I was never a Cowboys fan growing up before they drafted Dak. After today, who knows how much longer I'll be cheering for them." This was actually tweeted at 1:10 p.m., so 10 minutes after the deadline. This is a mess. What do you make of it, and who do you blame? Do you blame Dak's camp, or do you blame the Cowboys for what happened in the last few hours on tag deadline day?
Um, I guess this will be about as close as a live reaction you're gonna get from me because I've been following this saga for a while, but I've tailored off here towards the end of this. So I haven't seen like these tweets or anything. Um, but I mean, I probably put it more on Dax Camp. That's just more or less because of this whole time I've been saying that he needs to take the money that he can get now, rather than hold out for an extra couple million. Or I didn't know he wanted less years. Obviously, probably for when the salary cap bump comes up. What is it in a couple years that it bumps up?
I mean, it's going to go down either way.
Yeah,
So, I mean, it's not really a bump thing. I think he just wanted to get in the market quicker.
yeah. Oh, so he can get another bigger contract. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've always been in the camp of I think he just needs to get his money while he can because I know I've said this before on the show and I'll say it again. To me, there's just something about playing for the Cowboys where you're getting a lot of other endorsements and stuff
No,
like
for
that.
sure.
Where
For sure.
you're gonna make up that extra couple of million. It might not be straight away, but I think there's just other things added to being the quarterback of that team, especially when by all accounts it's a pretty loaded roster. You know what I mean? You've got
Yeah.
Zeke, you got CeeDee Lamb to pair with Amari Cooper. Like you got the arguably the best offensive line still. So I mean you're playing with a loaded team and you're the quarterback of the Cowboys, which is by all accounts like one of the highest accolades or whatever you want to call it that you can have in the NFL. So I don't know. I feel like they're just being kind of petty over it's hard for me to say a little bit of money because it's not a little bit of money, but in terms of what he's asking for in art, like what he's probably going to get on an open market, you know what I mean? It's not that much of a difference. He's never learned. I've said this before too, but he's never going to be in the same league as like a Pat Mahomes or anything like that. So what's a couple $1 million relatively, over the course of however many years? I get it, but it's something where I think the Cowboys are being generous. I wouldn't give him that type of money over that longevity. I don't see it, but it's obviously not for a guy like you or me to decide. It's past that. So,
well, here's the thing. Jerry ponies up and gives money.
He does.
Like he does. When push comes to shove, they'll have their arguments or whatever, but he'll give the money. And you know what? Props to him for doing that. He's a businessman. He knows the business better than many owners in the league. Whether he's perfect at it or not can be debated, but at least he knows the business. And the reality is he ponied up. He gave him $35 million annually. Whether we agree or not that he deserves that money, which I think we can both agree he probably deserves 20, maybe 15.
Yeah, I was going to say in the range of 20, yeah.
He doesn't deserve 35 annually. Yet, Jerry understands the logistics and the business, the fact that, all right, we give him 5 years, the cap will kind of shift throughout those 5 years, whatever. He understands that, yes, while it's not perfect, it's still $35 million annually, and he still gets $110 million guaranteed. And, with everyone saying, oh, yeah, he's kind of betting on himself here, this desperation doesn't show that he's betting on himself. It shows that he just wants the big money, or he wants a deal that's friendly to him when, honestly, take the longevity, take the stability of the 5-year contract. I don't understand from an agency perspective why they are so focused on getting him the deal that he actually wants when, let's be honest, that's an incredible deal. I think it's a little bit more than Russell Wilson money. That's not a bad deal. Why does he not just take it? Why is he pushing it too far? Like 20 minutes left to go. You get a good chunk of money guaranteed. It's $35 million. Just take it.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm Jerry, the offer's off the table for me after this year. I just let him play on the franchise tag and I let him walk. You know what I mean? Like you've said, if it's even in the ballpark of Russell Wilson, it's a stupid contract to me. And like you said, I'll give Jerry credit. He did pay when everyone else, kind of told him not to. And he's always done that. He's, put his money where his mouth is, and he does back up what he, who he kind of believes in, whether we agree with it or not. But like you said, for his camp, I don't know what more they're looking for because, like you said, the safety net of a 5-year, with all that guaranteed. And like you said, in the range of Russell Wilson money is just stupid to me for him not to take. Like I was just saying too, with all the endorsements that he's going to get, right, just playing for the Cowboys. It's crazy to me that this has gone on for that long and that they're still trying to tweak numbers and years or whatever when, I don't know. It's just I can't figure this one out. This is the one, like I said, I've been following the saga for a long time, but for them to keep bickering over whatever, a year difference or whatever on the contract like you just told me about, I don't see it.
And part of the problem, I guess, and let's shift to Dak's brother and his comments. If you're the Cowboys, how do you react to that? I mean, he's part of their camp.
Yeah, if I'm here, I was just going to ask you this question too. This will kind of tie into it. Do you believe Andy Dalton is better than Dak Prescott or equal to?
No, he's better.
Dak is better?
Dak is better, but I'm fine starting Andy Dalton over Dak after this.
To me, they're equal. And that's where, to me, I'm like, okay, you want to start mouthing off and say comments like that? Andy, you're in. Like, you're in, buddy.
It's not him, it's his brother, but still.
Still, it's like you said, it's a part of his camp. Obviously, that type of energy is being swirled around him. You know what I mean? Where it's like, all right, you guys don't want to pay me or shorten the contract by a year. Okay, fine. That's where the Cowboys need to play hardball. You know what I mean? they, like you said, we've seen them being paying guys, and by all accounts, I think they're overpaying for Dak here too. They just keep handing out money. It's time for them to just say, okay, you want to play hardball? We can play hardball too. You know what I mean? And to me, that's why I said at the beginning of the year, I think, or not the beginning of the year because the year hasn't started, but I think at some point we're going to see Dalton. I just think there's going to be a point where either Dak goes into a little bit of a stretch where he's not, the same efficiency, whatever, or the money becomes too much of an issue, or, this type of camp energy becomes more of a cancer to the rest of the team. You know what I mean? Where it becomes more of a looming problem than just him playing, which is difficult for me to say because Dak's always been good about keeping this separate. I will say that for Dak, he's always separated this from his play, but I think at some point it's going to come to the point where it's not going to work anymore.
So is it for you because you're saying they're equal mostly because of the money issue, or do you actually feel like?
Honestly, play-wise, I feel like they're about equal. Like Dak is.
I'm not sure about that.
Dak is a little bit better. You have to take into account Dalton's never played with the offensive line like that. He's never had a running back like that. What did he have in Cincinnati? Giovanni Bernard and
Joe Mixon, which on and off production.
Yeah,
let's be honest.
And he had Joe Mixon, but I mean, in his prime, he had like Jeremy Hill. He had AJ Green, but outside of that, it wasn't a whole lot. You know what I mean? It's arguably I would like to see what he would do with a more of a rounded roster around him. I'm not saying he's good or great, but I definitely think you can get close to, if not the same production from him that you would get from Dak Prescott.
Maybe statistically, I'm not too sure.
And then you add in, like you said, the money factor. To me, it's not even close at that point. When you factor in the money, to me, it's not even close.
Now, let's be honest here. I mean, I don't think many shows have talked about this, but I think this is an important thing to understand. If Dak next year, if we do have a full season and Dak next year does, let's say, get a transition tag or go on the open market, a team's going to pay him what he wants. There's a team out there that is going to be willing to give Dak the contract that he's looking for.
Yeah.
Now, as you've mentioned, now will the endorsement deals be as good? No. Will maybe the outside money be as good? No. But at least he'll get the contract he's looking for. So
yeah, but then to me, more or less, he's just going to be exposed at that point. You're going to go to way less of a roster because the teams that are willing to pay him that money aren't going to be nearly as good. And he's going to turn into Nick Foles. It's going to be what it is. He's just going to turn into someone that got paid a lot of money, which he wanted to right away, and he's going to disappear after that. I just don't think you're going to be able to get, like I said, the team that pays him that amount of money isn't going to be what he thinks it is. And I think he'll regret that decision really quickly if he does decide to go that route.
Because
which is why I feel like he's just playing hardball. I don't think he actually obviously I don't think he actually wants to leave, which is becoming concerning to me after seeing comments like this and stuff from his brother who's in his camp, like you said. It's becoming a little bit more concerning because I think he's starting to trend in that direction of being like, okay, I will leave. But that to me is where it's okay, do it. Everyone, there's that stereotypical saying of the grass is always greener on the other side. And I think if he leaves that scenario, like we're talking about with endorsements, with the roster, with, Jerry kind of letting him run the show like he does, he's going to regret it quick.
And I think one of the important things to keep in mind throughout all this is that Dak is better with a more talented team. He just is.
100%. And we've seen the numbers when he has Zeke versus when he doesn't and stuff like that. There's a big drop off when he doesn't have run game, when he doesn't have, kind of that play action, coaching for him that can set him up in those scenarios where he is effective, because he's only effective in very few settings and scenarios. So you have to get him in those spots for him to look like what he thinks is $35 million worth, which he's not. He's just not.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna talk about the bubble now. You ready to talk about the bubble?
I'm bubble ready.
Let's do it. So the NBA bubble has been very interesting so far. Number one, Rockets and Kings players are the first two to break quarantine. Bruno Caboclo left his room when he wasn't supposed to, and then Rashawn Holmes left the bowl for delivery food. The delivery food thing's pretty funny because they were tweeting at each other. Like, a few NBA players were like, you can get Grubhub here. Just go like in this direction, and then I guess Rashawn Holmes kind of screwed himself there, but it was kind of.
Did you see what his mom said too?
What did his mom say?
His mom said the only reason you should be leaving for food is if it's your mom's home cooking, so I don't know where you went. And then she said, I'll deliver if you really need me to.
God. And then we'll get to the food more specifically because this goes to another problem, of course, about the food, and we'll get to our thoughts there. But then the anonymous hotline has probably been the biggest story of the week in terms of the actual bubble, with multiple people just like reporting stuff on the hotline, and everyone's saying, oh my God, it's like Chris Paul or something, and people are just like pissed off that people are like snitching on the hotline. I thought the hotline was stupid because like the MLS doesn't need a freaking hotline. Why does the NBA need a hotline? What?
It's a little bit middle school, but
what are your thoughts on this anonymous hotline and everyone just calling it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little corny to me. Like you said, we don't see it with the MLS. I don't know why the NBA would need it. Separate story, a little bit inappropriate, but did you see that they're also having problems with NBA players calling women into?
Really?
Yeah.
That's
we've seen a couple Instagram models been posting on there that the NBA, she put on there, the NBA is going to get shut down for sure. It's only been a week and I've already been invited to the NBA bubble twice or something. Like, I don't know. I think there does need to be some, like policing per se, but at a certain point it's like on the guys, you know what I mean? Like, and then of course you get all the Twitter reactions of when the girl said that, and they're all like, I swear to God, if you get the NBA shut down because some third string player wanted to meet you, I'm gonna be pissed. It's like
Nick Young got in the bubble.
Yeah, it's just turned into like a little bit too much. You know what I mean?
Honestly, here's the thing. What is happening? We're already a week into this. And I'm sitting here going, this is, with everything that's happening, yes, we're being playful about it, but is this seriously going to work? Because let's be like, I believe it's going to work probably more so once games start, because I mean they're just there and training and practicing, but like, I mean the MLS has had its fair share of problems anyway with the bubble.
Yeah.
I
think you bring up a fair point about the MLS not necessarily needing a hotline, though. I think you're starting to see the personalities and the kind of – we talk about it all the time with the NBA. It's a players' league. I think you're starting to see that in a bubble-type setting how much personality there really is. Now, that's not a bad thing at all. You know what I mean? Like, that's good. We get to see, like, a little more on a personal level. But you're also going to get a lot more of this other stuff like we've been talking about, whether it's – the women or drinking or whatever, like food. Yeah. You're going to get a lot more of this other, kind of aspects of these guys day to day that we wouldn't generally otherwise see.
I'm sorry. I don't need to see this.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I don't care. I respect them as people. I don't need to know all this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it can be a little bit much, but I just think that it just speaks on the volume of, like, how player-driven the NBA really is. Like, but we get so much more media from these guys than we do with any other league.
Well, it's also like even coaches are like, you know what, post stuff up because, people need the content or whatever. It's like normally my policy would be different, but in this situation, go ahead. It's like, okay, I'm fine with Luka posting a video of him hitting half-court shots, but I'm not fine with them, I don't know, just showing these random stuff or what's actually, like, the food or like, what their day-to-day is in the hotel or whatever. Like, I don't really need this stuff. Like, All I need to know is that they're safe and they're ready to go. I think that's all we care about, and that's all we should be caring about at this point.
Yeah, like you said, I think we don't really need all that other extra stuff. I just think it's creating this atmosphere where, like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, they don't want them to be bored or something, so they, allow them to do all this kind of other stuff when really they should be focused on other stuff.
I'm
Like
sorry, watch TV.
getting ready for, games, like you said, the focus shouldn't be showing everyone my food or whatever, But I mean,
It's like just like watch TV or something, or like work out. Like Jimmy
yeah.
Butler's the best because Jimmy Butler got a noise complaint because he was working too hard in his hotel room. Now
I didn't see that.
Yeah, no, that's something I'll respect.
Yeah,
I respect that.
We need more of that rather than, like you said, the other
garbage.
What did JJ Redick put out a couple days ago on Twitter that he'll shotgun a Bud Light if he gets 10,000 retweets, and it became like a viral sensation? It was just like, what are we doing? Like, honestly, is this like a party atmosphere, or are we getting ready to play NBA games?
But also, not only that, are we certain that because it feels, at least from a social media perspective, like a party atmosphere, are we certain that once games fully start that everyone's going to be safe and we're not going to have problems?
That's what I want to ask you. I think, especially after me seeing, like, girls putting out there that they've been invited, do you think there's even longevity to this? I think if it's only been a week or whatever, and it's already being reported that there's outside influence, whether, like you said, it's going out to get food or whatever, like, I think it's more likely that we see, a spike in COVID numbers.
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting too, looking at, I believe it was Russell Westbrook, and a few more. I think Malcolm Brogdon got cleared today, I believe, or yesterday. At least going into the bubble, if you had it, you have to get cleared or whatever, all this stuff. So at least the protocols coming outside to in the bubble look good.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know necessarily about the safety and security that's being portrayed in the actual bubble itself. And that's where I'm like concerned more than anything else.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, I wonder what, like, the, like, precautions they're taking. I've seen on a few, like, posts of the Dallas Mavericks that I follow on Facebook of them, like, having to, like, scan a badge to get in and out. But I don't know, like, how,
if every team is doing that, or if that's
like, how in depth that is as far as people coming in, especially, rather than if you can scan to get out, like, how often are you going out, type of thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I thought the bubble was there to stay in the bubble. Like you said, there's obviously you can't keep guys there, like, lock them down, but, like, what are you going out to get if, like you said, there's Grubhub and they're providing food, and like, it's like a whole apartment complex and stuff. Like, it's not like you're just leaving, like, your room, you know what I mean? Like, there's plenty of other stuff to be doing. Like, what at that point, what are you leaving for?
Right. And here's the thing. I know that I believe Zion got an excused absence today. There's people getting absences, right? Saying, like, hey, I need to leave for this. I need to leave for a family matter and those things. That I can respect, right?
Yeah.
Because at least they're talking to the team and saying, hey, I have this matter that I need to attend to. I know Schroeder has a baby on the way in a few weeks. He's going to be leaving for that. That I respect. But if they're just leaving to quickly get food, I'm not sure how much that, affects COVID-19 or whatever. Of course, there's a reason why there's contactless delivery everywhere now. There's a reason for that. But it's like, I don't know what impact that makes, but at the same time, I'm just not entirely sure. But it is nerve-wracking because I think it just shows what Adam Silver was concerned about, maybe to a heightened degree, because we can actually see it every day.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I just wonder the longevity of this because, like you touched on with the MLS, we don't see this type of stuff. I mean,
but it's still been terrible.
Their numbers are worse, which does concern me because if their numbers are worse and we're not hearing about this stuff from them, what can we really expect?
I mean, we're getting matches canceled left and right.
That's what I mean. So what can we really expect from NBA if we're hearing that they're going out and doing all this stuff, inviting people?
Yeah.
We're not hearing that from MLS, and we're still getting
Cases.
Cases. Yeah.
Right. And we're mentioning the MLS because they're literally in the same bubble. They're just in opposite sides.
Yeah.
It's literally the exact same thing.
Exactly.
So it's strange. I don't know. Also, I didn't know you can go fishing there. Like the first Ben Simmons went fishing? Where did he go fishing?
I don't know. I seen Boban too out fishing.
Where's the
where are they?
Where they're in the bubble. They were fine. But where can they go fish?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm so confused.
That's what I mean. There's plenty of activities for those guys there.
But I'm so confused. Like, I've never been to like that Disney in Orlando, but is there like a fishing place you can go to now? What happened? I'm so confused.
I don't know.
It's so strange. I don't know what's happening. Now, finally, let's get to the food because I think we need to comment on this.
Yeah.
Also, we're going to be talking about the food tomorrow because we found it to be really funny. Shane, Brandon, and I, all the food stuff. LeBron's not going to eat this. Is he?
I guess these guys are on a little bit of a different level in terms of probably what they're expecting from the food. I just want to say it is a little bit not frustrating, but it is a little bit sad to me that like we have these complaints, more or less. Like there's people who, I don't want to get on such a somber note, but there's people that don't have food and stuff. I don't want to sound like spoiled.
Right? No, and that's not the point here. But that's not. I think the point of the discussion. The point of the discussion in general is the fact that these are world-class athletes. And a good portion of them literally have chefs.
Yeah.
And this is what they're getting.
These guys are on a different level as far as like when we picture like what, like a general meal should be. These guys are on another level, like you said, they're professional athletes, are on a certain like
diet
needs and stuff, calorie intake, which is why I found Embiid's post actually to be pretty funny when he said I'm going to look like he did when he was like 15. Because for a guy that big, this just isn't going to keep him going. You know what I mean? To be honest, for him, a smaller portion. Obviously, to us, it looks a little bit different. Whatever, Like I said, I don't want to like take anything away from. Obviously, there are starving people,
right? And that's very important. I think that's a good point that you bring up. That's really important. That there are people that are going through this. But in this particular situation, we're talking about world-class athletes who need more.
These guys are on like high levels of, training intervals and stuff like that, where they need, like I said, a certain number of calories, a certain number of, meats, a certain number of whatever. And the NBA should be doing better than this. It's not that great for, like we said, world-class athletes, a guy like LeBron, who I'm sure is used to like extreme gourmet, you know what I mean? This probably feels like a Lunchable to him, you know what I mean? It's like, so yeah, I think the NBA should be doing a little bit better, just to keep it short and simple. I think the NBA needs to be providing for these athletes that are going to be performing here in a couple weeks.
And then I love the Stacy's chips. That was the one thing that I found funny. Like, all right, you finished your strawberries and some salad, and you got the chips at the end. Like, okay, man, it's
it is
so weird.
It's pretty comical.
All right, enough with the bubble. Let's talk about the players that are actually now in the bubble and all the news that has been around there. So Ben Simmons, right? He's primarily playing point guard for them, so I really wanted to get your thoughts on the fact that he's now playing power forward for them in practices. Why do you think Brett Brown made this change, and actually do you think it's better for them long term as they hit this 8-game regular season schedule?
So one thing I do want to touch on with Ben Simmons is I've seen a recent video of him like actually shooting the ball. We can get Ben Simmons just to be able to shoot the ball at like a 20% clip instead of, an atrocious like never. The 76ers will be a lot better. Okay. That put aside, speaking on him playing power forward or whatever, I don't know that it necessarily makes too much of a difference because I still think he's going to be handling the ball and stuff. It's more of a label change as far as maybe his defensive positioning, which I don't think he's going to be able to guard necessarily a lot of power forwards, or maybe they're trying to switch it up so he gets somehow a mismatch where a power forward's trying to guard him, which is never going to happen unless it's like Giannis or, something like that. So to me, it's a little bit stupid, to be honest. It would make sense if we were playing 7th grade AAU basketball because then he'd be playing a little bit more in the post, which I think, fits him a little bit better. But if he's playing in the post, he's not going to have a guard guarding him. He's going to have someone bigger, which kind of eliminates his strengths. But yeah, I don't know that necessarily makes too much of a difference just because I feel like he's still going to be controlling the ball most of the time for them. So it's kind of like LeBron, when we can switch labels from point guard to small forward to power forward as much as we want, but it doesn't really change a whole lot of what he really does on the court for them.
But then why would Brett Brown? I have a question. Let's be honest. We're at a point where, let's say, we're in basically what May or June would look like late season. That's what this is right now. We're back to basically June and it's late season. Why at this stage? Now, obviously, we're kind of restarting, but why at this stage would they make this decision then at all? Is there anything in terms of the relation, if the focus of Embiid and Simmons playing together? Like, where is Brett Brown's reasoning to even do this at this stage?
Yeah, I think that's a fair point that you bring up. I think in more of relation to the Embiid-Simmons relationship, it's always been a little bit clunky. So for them to try, I just think it's more of a grab to like, okay, we're restarting. Let's restart, like fully restart to try and like, because obviously they started really slow this season. Like they're inconsistent. We didn't get what we thought we were going to get out of them. So to me, it just feels more of a grab. Like we're going to change some things verbally with, how we operate and stuff like that. And hopefully it somehow clicks a gear in a guy's mindset as far as, what his play style should be or whatever. Yeah, to me, it just feels a little bit weird. Like I said, I just think he's trying to get different mismatches. If they label him as a power forward, he's trying to get different, positioning value out of him defensively and offensively. But there's not much I can really grab onto here. You know what I mean? I just think, like I said, it's with LeBron. He's going to be handling the ball. But like I said, if you can just get a decent 20, 25 percent out of him shooting and he can space the floor a little bit, you're going to get more out of him. That's why I don't really understand the power forward label, because if you want him to feel like a guard, you probably label him point guard, which would also be awkward, but at least you're in his mindset then, because when you teach basketball from a young age, the mindset of being a guard versus a big, you're supposed to be in the post, a guard, you're supposed to be out. So if you label him more as a guard, I think you might get him to open up a little bit, and space the floor a little bit more, which is what you need from him because you already have Embiid in the post. But yeah, if you can just get if he's willing to shoot the ball, just shoot it. Like it doesn't have to go in all the time. Then you're going to get more production, I think, than you trying to label him a power forward and him playing a little bit more post ball.
So then here's a couple of things. One, at least for the duration of his career, he's played point guard. His position is point guard.
Yeah.
And then now you put him at power forward, and if, like you're saying, I think everyone agrees, they do want him to shoot a little bit more, and he has done that at times this season. It's not been perfect. I think he's still trying to grow that piece of his game. I mean, I think we can both agree what he's good at is assisting and passing the ball and getting guys in good position, right? But then if you're Brett Brown, are you trying to make him more of a stretch forward then at this point? Or like, Is that what their theory is? Like, that doesn't work for him. Like,
I don't know. Maybe because we've heard. Actually, now that I think about it, this might make more sense if I think about it this way. Because what we've heard from Brett Brown and Joel Embiid is that Embiid's always kind of had a problem, and with Brett Brown wanting to make him more of a stretch five. You know, we've all been told like we want Embiid in the post, we want Embiid in the post, and he said, well, that's not what I'm being asked to do. I'm asked to being a stretch five. So if we reverse those kind of roles and maybe we put Ben Simmons in the post more, then you have more of that spacing with your two best players. You know what I mean? So maybe he's trying to get a little bit of role reversal where, you know, we have Embiid spaced out a little bit more, which is what we've seen him being asked to do. We have Simmons a little bit more down low, and maybe you try and play a little more in and out reverse. I don't know how that would work, but
it's confusing because then you're asking Embiid to be more of a passer, which isn't his game, than Simmons, who is definitely more of a passing guard in this sense, or a passing big in this sense.
Well, in a half-court setting, which is also our problem with the 76ers, you know, because we want them to run a little bit more with Simmons. They slow the ball down a little bit more. In a half-court setting, if you can throw the ball into Simmons, you might be able to get a little bit more collapsing of the defense, which then he's a good passer to be able to find shooters around him type of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in a half-court setting, it would work if, you know, you slowed it down a lot. Because like I said, the problem for me is you're asking Embiid to be a stretch five, which is weird, but you know, that's what Brett Brown's asking him to do. So maybe him labeling Simmons as a power forward, he's trying to get that more of that spacing that he was looking for before, where because you don't get the shooting from Simmons. He hasn't shown the willingness to even shoot the ball. So Embiid has shown the willingness to shoot it. So maybe you reverse it and you get a spark. You know, it's a little bit late, like you said, in the season to be doing that, but it's probably a grab at something. 76ers to me still, though, I've said it for a while before the season shut down, I think they're going to make a surprise run. I do think they match up well with teams like Milwaukee. And if they can just get a little bit consistency, I think you could find this team in the finals.
I'm not sure about that, but considering the East potentially, I still feel like Milwaukee's going to find a way to win the East. But at the end of the day, let's also keep this in mind that next week we're going to have scrimmages. You know, we're going to have complete scrimmages. Every team is going to basically scrimmage. There's like a scrimmage schedule where teams are scrimmaging against each other next week. So potentially, I mean, I don't know how much of scrimmage footage we'll get to see. I imagine it won't be a lot because these aren't televised, which I don't understand, but they're not being televised, at least from what I can tell. Maybe they're trying to test this out in the scrimmages just to kind of see how it plays out potentially. I don't know how much are they going to be really creative in the scrimmages and just try to do everything kind of wonky, or because the scrimmages are there to get these guys kind of warmed up. They're not. I don't think they're necessarily there to experiment at all.
Yeah, I mean, probably, like I said, a few last-second tweaks as far as, you know, trying to switch things up a little bit. Like you said, though, this is more of probably to me more the scrimmages are there for conditioning and stuff like that, rather than to, you know, readjust how you operate as a team. So more or less, it's probably just, you know, it's kind of a flash in the pan type of thing where if it works, it's great, you know, but if it doesn't, we just go back to what we were doing.
Yeah. And let's talk about Rondo. So Rondo had thumb surgery today. It was just announced today that he came out of surgery. He's fine. He'll be back in 6 to 8 weeks. The Lakers without Rondo, and of course we've mentioned how big potentially missing Avery Bradley could be. For these 6 to 8 weeks, Caruso is going to have a lot more on his plate, I imagine, due to Rondo's injury. But how does this affect the Lakers? Because I presume Rondo will be back like right about when the playoffs start or in the second or third round. So what does that mean for the Lakers?
Yeah, that's something I brought up to you that was a real concern to me a couple weeks ago with Avery Bradley not joining the team for the restart. I feel like I've mentioned, he's sort of that key piece as far as the starters go, as far as defensively and, being able to space the floor. Losing Rondo's even bigger for me because I think Rondo brings a certain kind of playoff, and we've heard it before with playoff Rondo, where he steps it up in the playoffs and he plays a lot better. But we've even heard, Doc and, different coaches, Alvin Gentry, who coached him in New Orleans, say stuff like, when we get in the playoffs, Rondo knows what the other team's trying to do by game 2. He can figure them out in a game of, different type of sets and stuff that they're running. So just from a mental standpoint, I think him being on the floor is huge. Especially for that second group. He controls the pace for that whole second group. They're a little bit faster when Rondo's on the floor, that second group. So I wonder, now that Caruso is transitioning into probably more with the starters, the second group, I'm going to be wondering what type of pace they're going to be playing. Because, your ball handler is probably at this point J.R. Smith. I don't really know where you go.
What do you do with JR? Yikes.
Yeah, so I'll be interested to see how the type of flow and tempo that the second group plays with. But going back to just what Rondo does for this team from a mental standpoint, it's going to be a huge loss, especially, like I said, with Avery Bradley being out. They really don't have, like, a real point guard that's proven, which to me could really hurt them if they get the wrong matchup in the second round, because I don't think he's going to be back till the third round. So the first round, I think they can overcome that. The second round, depending on who they get, I think it could be a real problem for them. Not to say that they can't overcome that, but I think it'll be a lot more challenging than they think it's going to be. So hopefully Rondo's back for them just in time for it to, really start ramping up and you start to, play some real good teams. Because I've mentioned it to you, and it's still a huge concern of mine, the loss of Avery Bradley. For Frank Vogel and what Avery Bradley does for that team, Rondo wasn't going to be able to provide that shooting anyway. You know what I mean? And the spacing on that first unit. So now you're taking away, to me, the defensive aspect. Caruso is a decent defender, but he's definitely not Rondo or Avery Bradley. And I love Caruso, don't get me wrong, but just asking him to do that much more, I'm a little concerned with the guard position for the Lakers, especially with smaller, quicker guards. Like I said, if they get the wrong matchup, if they somehow run into like Houston with Russell Westbrook at point guard, who guards him? It becomes a real question mark for this team. I'll be interested to see. To me, the biggest thing is the pace of play for the second unit. The bench unit has always been solid for the Lakers, so I wonder what the production looks like there. Last thing I do want to say, though, about Caruso, I think he's more than willing. We've seen him, close games for the Lakers and be on it in crunch time on the floor for them. But just over like you said, elongated play time, how efficient can he be? Because he's actually, I heard a crazy stat. The Lakers were like +9 or something when Caruso's on the floor with LeBron. So LeBron's been able to cover up obviously some of Caruso's deficiencies, where with Rondo they've been, I think, +2. So there's a better plus minus for Caruso, but it's in a lot shorter time. So.
And then let's also talk to finish out the Lakers. I think it would be important to mention J.R. Smith. To bring him in here, jokes aside, what does he bring to the table from this team that they didn't have before the restart?
Kind of like we talked about at the trade deadline, them needing kind of another playmaker. I don't know how efficient JR is at this point, but it's that same type of kind of juice I think they were looking for when we were talking about at the trade deadline, Derrick Rose. You know what I mean? A guy who can come in and just kind of take over, like I said, ball handling and isolation responsibilities, when LeBron's not on the floor, especially from the guard position. Obviously a little bit more shooting with JR, a familiarity with LeBron. So, there's a rapport there. I don't expect a whole lot. I think that's what people have to understand is I don't think you can be expecting a lot from JR at this point. So don't expect him to come in and be, like a great isolation player like he's shown in flashes. But if you limit your expectations for him, I think he can handle, the role that I think he's going to be given, because I don't think it's going to be very big.
Yeah. And then let's move on to the Boston Celtics. So one of the biggest things, this kind of really started towards the All-Star break and then kind of continued towards the end of the season with Kemba and his knee, and he's been dealing with some soreness. I'm concerned about this now more than I was towards the All-Star break. And the main reason why is just because we've had, a few months off now, right? They ended in March. We've had a good chunk of time off before we got to this bubble setting. We didn't know it was going to happen for a while, right? So, we ended on March 20 some, and now we're in July. And the fact that he's still having issues with the knee is just really concerning. What's your thoughts on it, and how do you feel like the Celtics play without Kemba on the floor?
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think it's the longer this has gone on, generally and kind of obviously speaking, it becomes a greater concern, especially when we were told from the beginning it wasn't that big of a deal, it was a little more, not to say rest, but, give a guy a day off here and there type of thing, not necessarily like a much bigger issue like I feel like it's becoming. But Kemba and the Celtics on and off the, Kemba on the court or off the court, I think is a huge difference. As far as providing leadership for that team, they're a little bit younger, kind of a calming presence as far as, being an extension of the coach, which is always what we say with point guards. I think Brad Stevens finally got his guy that he could kind of implement his system with, and, a guy that kind of followed what he asked him to do, rather than Kyrie being a little bit more ball dominant kind of, isolation. So if he misses periods of time, it's going to be really hard for the Celtics. Although they have shown depth before, when Kyrie got hurt and stuff like that, we've seen obviously the young guys can step up. Tatum towards the Taylor end of that, before it got shut down, was really starting to break out and really, really perform well. So obviously his role will be expanded. But like I said, more or less, this team needs kind of a steadying, like, veteran leadership presence, going if they're going to make a run in the playoffs. This is, I think, also another sleeper team that I think people have kind of forgotten about. But they're going to need Kemba to do
that. And then let's move on to another injury, which has also been really interesting, pretty much throughout the whole year, in Victor Oladipo. He said about a week ago that he's not going to play, wants to focus on his rehab. And then now he's making some progress and he's thinking about coming in the bubble and playing. If you're the coach of the Pacers, do you feel like it's smart to have Oladipo play at this point, or do you feel more comfortable with him just taking the time off, considering where we expect the Pacers to be at the end of all this, which is maybe a first or second round exit?
Yeah, this one sucks for me because this was my dark horse team. If you remember us making predictions at the beginning of the year, this was my team that I kind of slated to, make some decent noise in the playoffs. Obviously that revolves around Victor Oladipo. He was my breakout performer, obviously with me having the team where I did have them. So obviously I'd like to see him out on the floor. Like you said, though, at this point, making a little progress and having a whole offseason to kind of re-up himself is, a lot more important for this Pacers organization going forward, because it's still a younger team. They do need probably another piece. But I think Nate's done a good job. Nate McMillan, the head coach of the Pacers, he's done a good job of just keeping that ship steady, no matter, kind of the curveballs, losing Paul George initially and stuff like that have gone. Victor Oladipo has been a really good bright spot for this team. I want to see him play as a fan, but I know if I'm Indiana and I'm Larry Bird, I'm asking him to sit out and think of next year, because like I said, I think this team does probably need another piece. Whether you get that this offseason or not, is probably not going to happen, just being in Indiana. but yeah, like you said, being a first or second round exit isn't worth the risk of re-rupturing that
Yeah.
Achilles. Or
Yeah. I have another piece of the Ben Simmons story that
oh,
just came out here. Okay, so Brett Brown intends to have Ben Simmons run the second unit offense.
okay. So probably a little bit less of him with the first unit. Like I said, probably a little more. You're going to be asking Embiid to probably do a little more playmaking then, because if Ben Simmons is going to be taking over when the second unit comes in, he's going to be asked to probably do a little more of that run and gun that we've been hoping for. You take Embiid off the floor, the team gets a little bit faster, then you ask Simmons to push the ball a little bit more.
I wonder now if this is sort of a two-part thing where just you have two separate units, one that include Ben Simmons and one that includes Embiid,
It is.
instead of having them both play at the same time. Do you think that's beneficial for them?
Yes, definitely. I think that's something you and me have always been talking about, which is why we always have good debates when we talk about Simmons or Embiid. But the bigger argument is, can these two play together? You know what I mean? That's always what we brought to attention when we have these debates. But I think they're finally realizing that for these two to be effective, they both play two different styles of basketball, and it doesn't necessarily mesh well together, especially with Ben Simmons not being able to space the floor. But like I said, yeah, you'll probably get them starting together. And for the first little bit, it's going to be run through Joel Embiid. And Ben Simmons probably taking a back seat to rest a little bit, and then look faster pace, when the second unit comes in, and let Ben Simmons do what he does most efficiently, which is run the floor. And like you mentioned, get other guys involved. I think this is probably the best way for this team to operate if they're going to keep both of them together, just because we've obviously seen the inconsistency and the incapability of these two being able to play together.
I wonder how it looks in the scrimmages, of course. They're probably the most interesting scrimmage team for this reason. But if they like it, they could be on a different trajectory, I think. We'll see, though. We have to see how it works on the floor.
Yeah.
So I put the Karis LeVert news on here partially because I wanted to talk about the Nets and what their perspective is. So Karis LeVert, Jock Vaughn says he kind of has a different swagger about him. I love Karis. He was really productive towards the tail end of before the shutdown. The Nets are in a strange position. Yeah, they brought a few guys in to kind of fill out the roster, but they've kind of lost it now because they don't have DeAndre Jordan, they don't have Spencer Dinwiddie. It's not really the same team. Do you expect big things out of the Nets, or do you feel like there's a potential that they're going to be a first round exit and that's kind of it? This is kind of a washed year for them with all the pieces that they've lost.
Yeah. So just to touch on Karis LeVert, because I know that's your boy. I wanted to give you a little love on the pod and say that this has been your boy from day one. So
Same with Dinwiddie too. But
so I
it's
know it's probably a
unfortunate.
little bit exciting for you to hear. He's going to be playing with a little more, kind of swag to him that he needs to play with, because he is a really good player, and I think he can be kind of that. I don't think he'll get the chance to be, but I wish he would get kind of that third role around Kyrie and KD next year. You know what I mean? Where he's kind of that third star. I don't think he'll get those opportunities, but he's a good young piece. But going back to Brooklyn as a whole, or one more thing I want to touch on, just because you mentioned them bringing in a couple of guys. I was really happy to see Jamal Crawford get some run.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch him.
He should be in the league for sure. The dude can still fill it up with just about anyone. But just the Brooklyn as a whole, I think they know this is the last year since Kyrie went out. I think they know it's all about next year when you hopefully get KD back fully healthy, and I think they're probably looking to bring in someone else if you can package a couple of those young guys. But yeah, I don't know. To me, like we mentioned at the beginning of the year, the DeAndre Jordan thing is a little clunky for me. But yeah, I think they knew once Kyrie went out that it was a wash year. You already had KD sitting out. The hype built around this team is all about next year, and that's what everyone's looking forward to. But I will say it'll be fun to see, like you said, and you've been on the hype train of younger guys like Dinwiddie, not necessarily younger, but Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert, some of these other guys get more ops when they've shown that when they get these chances, they've been more than effective.
Mm-hmm. I mean, looking ahead to next year, let's say we do start on December 1st. If everyone's back healthy, is this team an NBA title contender next year? Especially under a shortened season, if we have, let's say, a 60-game season or whatever?
I mean, they're definitely a contender. I'm not willing to crown them champions just yet. I'm not saying you said that, but I know a lot of people will just because Katie's back, and Kyrie will probably should be fully healthy by then. So a lot of people are going to crown them right away. I'm still intrigued to see kind of this chemistry or lack thereof that I feel like is going to be existent. Especially with them, I feel like always pushing for kind of a third star when I think they have good depth right now.
Oh, we've had conversation. Kyrie's like, we need a third star. I'm like, chill out.
Yeah, that to me is, you're going to kill some of your depth. You're going to kill some of the youth. But yeah, I'll be interested to see next year. I think if Katie's fully healthy, and I think if Kyrie is there for the playoffs, I think this team is easily Eastern Conference Finals. I mean, I think that's more than – it's not really me going out on a limb. It's more than fair for me to say that this team is the Eastern Conference Finals team if those guys are healthy. But I can't put them past there yet just because of, like I said, chemistry issues. I feel like there's going to be problems and bumps along the road where we've seen before with KD and Kyrie, a little bit of a lack thereof, doing their due diligence of trying to keep the team together, as far as a chemistry standpoint.
But in a shortened season, do you think that will be exacerbated a little bit more? Like if we have a really, really short season, how much will that be of effect?
To me, the shortened season would benefit them because I think there's going to be less time for them to kind of bicker. You know what I mean? I think there's going to be less time for them to, have those chances where things might not go 100%. Now, obviously, you can counter that and say with a shortened season, you're going to have more, challenging spots and games that are going to mean more. But I just think over a shortened season, I just feel like these guys want to get along so good because they are friends that the less time they spend together is almost more beneficial.
Yeah.
Because like me and you have touched on with the bubble scenario, just speaking on NBA and the bubble as a whole, is you can be around guys for, limited amount of time, but when you're spending every day with them for multiple weeks, it does get stale. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's something I brought up before. So limited time is probably beneficial to this team.
Yeah. And then let's talk about the Kings as well. De'Aaron Fox suffered an ankle sprain in Wednesday's practice. He'll be reevaluated in a week's time about. The Kings are in an interesting spot now in the bubble because they're still, somewhat in the race here. Whether likely they're going to get up here, I don't think is very likely. Do you think the bubble can be a positive experience for such a young team like the Kings?
Yeah, the same thing like we've been talking about. I think the chemistry especially from a young team, these guys can kind of rally around and kind of make kind of an AU setting where, you're just hanging out with your guys. And I think it benefits a younger team a lot more than it does an older team just because, like I said, some of these older vets kind of get tired of each other a little bit quicker. They've been here, done that. The young guys seem to kind of enjoy each other's company a little bit more, especially this newer youth that we're kind of seeing in the NBA where, a lot of these guys have played together and stuff before. So I think it's beneficial for a younger team to be able to spend time together, which hopefully will put this team in more of what we thought they were going to be this year and kind of accelerating their growth because they're a good young team. They just need more time together.
And then let's move on to the Rockets. I think this will spark an interesting conversation considering Russell Westbrook is still recovering from COVID-19. Of course, James Harden just got to the bubble a few days ago. Let's say, hopefully this isn't the case, but let's say the first 8 games of the season, Russell Westbrook is not there. And they're now at around 7. I believe they're at 6 here, but it's a tight race in the West, for the 8 seed and all that. without Westbrook, let's say for those first 8 games, are you concerned about them falling down the pipe a little bit, maybe to a 7 seed? Do you think that could affect them if they hit the play or when they hit the playoffs, or do you think they'll be just fine if Westbrook does miss some time?
The only I don't know if this is the point you're trying to make, but the only problem is then it then becomes, when Westbrook comes back, ball handling duties, and who, if we get to a point where in certain points of the game James Harden expects the ball, and we get more of this older Rockets team where it was all James Harden, that would be my only concern as far as, this team not being able to make a step forward, because unless this team gets the Clippers, I think they win just about any series. I know I'm going to keep on it because I said it from the beginning of the year. It'd be a little bit hard for me to kind of go back on my words now, but I think this, outside of the Clippers, has the best chance to advance. And I made the point even more when they traded away Clint Capella. I think Russell Westbrook becomes more efficient, being able to drive the ball, which is why I had this team winning the West at the beginning of the year. Obviously, I know I'm going to get a lot of hate because the Lakers are playing really good right now. But like I said, especially if Rondo and Avery Bradley aren't there, I think they're going to really have a problem if somehow, they match up with the Rockets. I think the Rockets win that matchup if it's early on. But
What's the best matchup here for the Rockets? Because I keep hearing Denver as like the perfect spot for them.
Okay, I'm gonna say something, and I'll probably get a lot of flack for it, not from you, but a lot of people, is any team that gets Denver is gonna beat them. I don't see Denver to me is just one of those teams that is just like a stat monster, but can never just win games that you expect them to.
I'm really confused with Denver, and I guess we can also shift to Denver as well with Jokic, actually finally being in the bubble after a pretty wild couple of weeks for him. But Denver to me, I mean, the beginning of the year, Jokic wasn't that productive, and they weren't that productive as a team. And I think it kind of lingered throughout the whole year because even once Jokic started kind of getting back to normal, guys like Murray weren't that affected, or Gary Harris wasn't that effective. Like, I don't know what to make of Denver. I just don't, especially in this stacked Western Conference. Like, I just don't know what to make of them at all right now. I'm still very confused.
That's the team for the last couple of years I can't figure out, and I just think it's supporting cast around Jokic. I know that's easy to point the blame, but I just feel like it's just not that good of a – like, they have a lot of depth and good, like, solid – how do I word this? Like 7 out of 10 pieces. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm rating each player, each one of them is like a 7. None of them are like above a 7. None of them are below a 7. It's just a bunch of like good B plus players. No A's, no C's. You know what I mean? It's just a midline roster, but with a lot of depth. As a Mavs fan, I'm praying that we can get the Nuggets and avoid the Clippers. Because I think like I said, I think if any team gets the Nuggets, I think they beat them in the first round. I just don't think there's any confidence around that Nuggets team that they can get it done. We had question marks about Jokic's kind of drive at the beginning of the year, wanting to be a star. Did he kind of want to take over? I think he's solidified himself and, kind of proved the point that he is the guy there. But just the roster around him, I just feel like is just not what we expect from a third in a pretty stacked Western Conference.
Was it last year that they had the number 1 seed?
Yes.
They did not feel like a number 1 seed the whole year.
No, definitely not. And especially in the playoffs when you get the 8 seed Spurs, who had an aging LaMarcus Aldridge as their guy, and it was a series. You know what I mean? It went 5 in the first round, which – yeah, I don't know. I don't even really want to – don't get me started on the Nuggets because that's my one team that I just hate. I just feel like there's hype around them every year because they win games, but they just never amounts to anything for me. They just never get it done when you expect them to get it done.
winning in the regular season is not the same thing as winning in the playoffs. It's also not the same thing as winning in the bubble. Let's be honest. This is a much different situation. So, yeah, I'm kind of with you. I have to look and see how it shakes up after we finish the 8 games before we get into like the playoff predictions or whatever. But at this moment in time, yeah, I'm not too sure about him either.
Yeah, and that's why to me, going back to the Rockets, I just feel like the one team that's going to give them problems is the Clippers because I feel like they can match up, with Harden, with Kawhi, and they have Paul George. But outside of that, I don't think anyone matches up with them as far as being able to keep up with the guards and play that small ball. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of teams that can play that small and that fast, which is why I'll go back to the initial point of, if Westbrook does miss time, I wonder if we get sort of that same old, James Harden of isolation basketball. Yeah, it just kind of does this thing, which could be a little bit concerning if going into the playoffs, that's kind of your mindset, rather than where they finished the season where it was kind of a two-man show and Westbrook was actually doing a little more in the driving and dishing. You know what I mean? So
yeah. And I think it's going to be weird, too, if let's say, it's just basically Harden with no center other than P.J. Tucker. How does that look?
Yeah.
It's going to be quite an interesting thing. We'll see if he plays. Hopefully he recovers quickly and is able to come in the bubble quick enough to start the season, or start the restart, I should say. But we'll see. Finally, we'll go to the last team we'll cover for today. We'll go through some other teams next week, of course, as we're getting closer. But Kawhi says he's ready to go. Kawhi and the Clippers, are you still kind of where you were at the beginning of the year, where you feel like they're the best team here, or no?
Yeah. Did you say, am I concerned about them?
Well, do you feel where you were at the beginning of the year, where you kind of felt, I think most people felt that they were the best team here? Do you think they're the best team in the bubble right now?
Yeah, hands down, I think this is the most talented, most complete roster. Small little moves like, Reggie Jackson, I think really helped this team. But obviously when you think about this team, you're thinking about the starting lineup, and you've got Paul George and you've got Kawhi. To me, those are the two best two-way players in the NBA, and you've got them on the same team. Obviously, Paul George wasn't exactly healthy most of this year. He kind of pulled a Kawhi and, did some load management. Kawhi usually does his thing. But to me, this team just has too much talent. It's not a matter of chemistry. It's just a matter of just being able to overload teams, especially I think defensively. This team didn't get a lot of hype for some reason defensively. We talked
because
about
they didn't play enough. Kawhi and Paul George didn't play enough at all together.
Yeah, I know, but I don't know what it's gonna take, but people need to realize it's just going to be what Kawhi does, and he's going to turn it on in the playoffs. I mean, he won a championship last year. He's done it with San Antonio. You know what I mean? At a certain point, we just need to just realize, yeah, he's going to take games off, but he's one of the few guys, I think, that can just switch it on. You know what I mean? And I think you're going to see it again this year. I think there's going to be another level that Kawhi reaches, especially, I think, playing against Pat Beverly, who takes a lot of defensive pressure off of him. Paul George, like I mentioned, this team is just too long and good defensively for them to not be able to just shut teams down completely. And towards the end of the year, we saw them I forget who they played, but they held a team under 80 or something, which in today's NBA is stupid to hold a team under 80. But it just shows you that when this team wants to play defense, that will be their strong suit, is the defense. And I think Doc Rivers being the head coach is a huge asset to this team that also a lot of people don't talk about. We just talk about the stars, but the way he implements defenses and stuff like we've seen in Boston is huge.
Look, I know this is really tight, but if I'm Doc Rivers and the Clippers, I'm not playing Kawhi or Paul George almost any minutes the first 8 games. I'm not playing them almost at all. And first off, let's be honest, this was basically an extended load management for these guys, so it was beneficial because let's be honest, Paul George had a lingering injury most of the year. Kawhi took games in and out, as he always does. This was basically, for the Clippers at least, an extended load management from March 20th or whatever to now.
Yeah.
And these first 8 games doesn't really matter for them. Even let's say they drop down to the 5 or 6 seed. Do we think any less of them if they drop down that low? Again, there's no home field advantage here, so does it really matter where you place? Not really. As long as you're in the playoffs, does it really matter? I guess matchups maybe matter. I don't think you want to play the Lakers in the first round if you're the Clippers, because again, Lakers-Clippers is just intense and crazy no matter what it's going to be. I mean, we'll see that in a couple of weeks. But if I'm the Clippers, do you agree that if you're Doc Rivers, you just kind of let them play a few minutes, kind of get them conditioned, and then get them ready to go for the playoffs?
I'm probably looking to get a little more run. I'm probably trying to ramp it up just because I think like you said, we've got kind of an extended load management for this team. I think we got to sort out some of these chemistry questions. Not like I just said, not that I have, but I just feel like there probably is a little bit of chemistry question because these guys, like you mentioned, haven't played a lot together. So this to me is more of a ramp up, and then maybe the last game or two you sit them before you start the playoffs. But I don't think anyone in the first round is really going to give them a problem anyway, type of thing. So to me, it's more of a ramp up period than it is kind of a rest period, just because I feel like you do want defensive chemistry, especially going in. Like I said, for this team to be able to play defensively, they have to understand, like what dictates what matchups per se, like who you get and what type of style of play. Is Pat Beverly going to be always on the guard, or are you going to, put him on a bigger, like, stuff like that. You have to kind of sort out. I don't think it'll be a problem offensively, but defensively, I think this team needs to kind of get the basics down.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this team's kind of built off rest. It's kind of like they already won a title, where they're just kind of built off the rest. And I think, 8 games, I don't know what it matters necessarily. I mean, you can play them 5 to 10, maybe 15 minutes, but I don't think any more than that. Like, yeah, you can give them chemistry in spurts, but at this point, I think once they hit the playoffs, we know what Kawhi's capable in the playoffs. I think we understand that when it's playoff time, this team's going to figure out the chemistry issues rather quickly, regardless of how much these two play.
Yeah,
So
I tend to agree with you. I just think we've seen it before. I think this team, Kawhi especially, can just kind of turn it on. You know what I mean? And when he turns it on, he's the best player. It's just the reason we don't talk about him as the best player is because he doesn't play in the regular season.
Yeah. All right, let's go to UFC 251. First off, let me say a couple things on Fight Island. Here's your Fight Island frequently asked questions. Did Dana White overhype it? Yes, he did. Yes, he did. It was overhyped by a lot. It was literally just a spot for them to keep the fighter safe. Was it still awesome to watch? Yeah. It was cool to see all the Fight Island logos and everything, and to see how all that thing was set up. Yeah, it was cool. Did it do its job? Were fighters safe? Yes. And that's what matters. And was it the most world-class way? Is any sport going to do it better than the UFC in terms of keeping their fighters safe and keeping everyone involved safe? Nobody, not even the NBA or MLS bubble, can take anything from these guys. This is the way to do a world-class event in sports or concerts or whatever. That was their original goal with this, and they completed it in a week. That was impressive. Fight Island this week, even for the last few days, I know we had a card yesterday, which I watched bits and pieces of. This is awesome. This was nice, and they accomplished what they wanted to. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I definitely think you're right. It was a little bit overhyped, but it made it fun, the build up, us being able to talk about it. And like you said, the hype surrounding it was fun to talk about. I will say that, like you said, it was a little bit overdone in the fact that I wanted a little bit more from it. But nonetheless, it was still really efficiently done, like you touched on also with, keeping athletes safe and stuff like that. But the marketing for it also, I think, was really efficient. Now, I don't know if you want to dive right into it, but I had a problem with the main event.
You had a problem with the main event. Let's go down the list here a bit, and let's get to the big stories at the end. Okay.
Okay.
Um,
Sure.
Volkan Ozdemir, that was a pretty fun fight, but
That
I
was.
think we're expecting him to win at that point.
Mhm.
Paige Van Zant, is she done with fighting now, or do you think she's going to Bellator?
Yeah.
Because I'm in a strange spot. Like, do you think that's why I'm kind of squinting a little bit? But like, do you think she's completely done with fighting, or do you think one of our favorite fighters to watch is done?
um, I mean, I think she probably ends up going somewhere else. I would like her to just hang it up because I think she's been, you know, how do I say this? It's just a little bit overhyped with her. You know what I mean? There's a lot of surrounding things with her, but the fighting never really lives up to its bill. Obviously, like you're talking about her leaving, we've heard Dana at the press conference, say, it's time for her to look for somewhere else because she does do quite a bit of like contract talking and stuff for not really ever like performing that great. So it's probably time for her to look elsewhere if she does want to continue fighting. I would probably rather just like have it be over. I don't know how you feel about it. She's not a bad fighter. It's just not.
I'm a Van Zant fan. If there's any fighter in the world I want to interview, it's Paige Van Zant.
Yeah.
She's just so awesome in so many ways, and I loved her book. Obviously, I'm just a huge fan of hers. So the last year or two, as a diehard fan of her, it's been hard to watch.
Yeah.
It's just been difficult, but at the same time, you have to understand. And Megan Anderson talked about this on her show the other day, and I was listening to her kind of speak on it as well, where it's like, she makes more money off the cage than on it.
Yep.
I think there's a company, again, I keep saying Bellator because I think if there's any way she's going to go, her husband's already in Bellator. If there's any place where she's going to go and be welcomed in right away, I think it's Scott Coker in Bellator.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, and I think Bellator would give her a lot of money. But at the same token, I am starting to feel like it's better for her to turn into more of a celebrity voice than anything else because I'm just not sure what technical skills are there. And I thought flyweight would give her a shot to actually do something. It honestly, unfortunately, made it worse and made me feel less confident about her fighting skill moving forward, unfortunately.
Yeah. I don't mean to kind of chuckle there towards the end, but it was a little disappointing. Um, she's I just think over the last, like you said, the last couple of fights, she's been dominated pretty well by. I don't want to take anything away from the people she's fighting, but pretty low class. It's not like she's like fighting like world class fighters. I
Yeah.
don't like I said, I don't want to take anything away, but it's just she's been dominated by lower
Yeah.
tier. So it's to me, I'm with you. It's probably more time to just transition to being, like you said, a celebrity voice rather than.
Yeah. It's tough because, again, I love Paige, but man, it's been rough. It's been
Yeah.
hard. So,
I think we can see it on Dana's face too. He's kind of done with it.
yeah,
We saw a
it's
little
just
more
sad.
enthusiasm from him earlier on, but I think it's
It's
tailored
just
off for him too.
it's just sad for me, man. Like the whole thing just feels sad, and I don't know if it's just because I think it's because I'm just a huge fan of hers, but it's just it hurts. It just hurts to watch her fight because you get excited and you're like, okay, she can finally kind of turn the page, and it just hasn't happened, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And then Amanda Hebos, let's turn to her really quick. Honestly, I think she's gonna find her way in a contender spot quick. She was, by the way, her interview, not only like her interview outside the cage, but also her excitement last night watching the fights backstage. She is really fun to watch. This is a really fun fight on her end. I think she has a shot to be a contender in a flyweight division that I think needs more contenders. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I think we need a little bit more personality, especially, in that division, that in the women's ranking. And I think that she was but obviously, like you touched on, quite a character in the press conference and stuff like that. So I don't know. I think she's exciting. I don't know that I necessarily put too much weight, kind of like I said, on that fight in particular, just because I don't know what to expect from Paige Van Zandt as far as fighting goes anymore. But I think she's got the right personality to be able to kind of market, like you said, that flyweight division and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, we could go either way with that. I'd probably like to see one more like test per se before I give her like a real good shot at something. But yeah, I don't know. With, like I said, I don't want to put too much weight on that one fight.
Yeah. And then let's go to Rose Namajunas versus Jessica Andrade. I didn't have too much of a problem with the decision itself. It was a really close fight. These two always fight a really fun fight. But for Namajunas, her going up to fight Zhang Li, do you think that fight's really interesting for you for the strawweight title, and maybe Rose getting her strap from Wei Li?
To be honest, I know I'm in the minority on this one, but I don't know if I want to say this because I know I'm going to get some crap from you for this one, but I don't know if Rose won that fight. So I
have a tough time picking it. Like I wasn't too sure about it, so I was okay with the decision.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think Rose going up and fighting Wei Li, I think she's going to get handled pretty well. I don't know that Rose is – I'm not sold on Rose yet. Let me just put it that way. I'm not there with her yet.
Yeah. You're not at that spot. Yeah, I can understand that. I feel like the division is a little weird once Wei Li won the title, because I felt like it just made the division really strange for me, where I just don't know what the direction's going to be. I feel like it's just going to keep switching hands constantly. There's not going to be one person really leading the way moving forward.
Yeah, but I think that's actually good for this women's weight class. I think it's better for a little more intrigue rather than one dominant fighter. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I guess, because I guess you can make the argument with the flyweights that's been the biggest issue. So
yeah.
But I don't know, if there's only like 3 or 4 contenders, I think it's going to be weird just to see it switch hands between all 4 of them. And I'm not sure how long it's going to take before the division really gets resolved, I guess.
Yeah.
Is where I'm at with that. Peter Yan and Jose Aldo, what was your perspective on this fight?
I think Peter Yan's going to be a real problem in this division for a long time.
Yeah.
I think he pretty much handled this fight. I don't want to sound, because I know I've always kind of said I want the fights to go, but I thought this fight should have been stopped a little bit earlier than it did.
Yeah, I think I'm right with you there, yeah.
Yeah, so that was – I don't want to bring up the refs too early, but that was my first kind of –
Yeah, the ref was pretty bad for this fight.
The problem – I had a few problems with this card, but that was kind of my first one that I really was like kind of disturbed by, because I thought Jose Aldo was getting beat up pretty bad there towards the end. But yeah, like I said, I think this is more about Peter Yan and the dominance that he kind of showed, really overwhelming, an aging Jose Aldo, but still, effective. He's not that washed up just yet, so I don't want to like take anything away from him. But like I said, the dominance, it was pretty evident that he overwhelmed him pretty much the whole fight. So.
And then let's talk about Henry Cejudo as well.
Oh, God, don't get me started. Did you see his tweets during the fight?
Yeah, that's why I wanted to bring him up. Honestly, let's preface this for a second. Is Henry Cejudo in the GOAT conversation at all right now at this moment?
No. I don't even – I don't want to just get on and just start ripping him, but I think it was you who brought it to my attention that, like, you don't just get to have one, like, pretty much 1 or 2 title defenses and just label yourself the GOAT, I don't even know where this type of like energy comes from.
Well, hang on. Here's the whole thing. You're missing one important point. You know why he says he's the GOAT? Because he won those Olympic gold medals.
That's
I don't
cute.
know how that
That's
translates.
cute, but we're in the UFC now. Like, we're talking about UFC GOAT. Like, this doesn't
MMA GOAT, basically.
You don't get to take over your previous accomplishments and label it as your current accomplishments. Like, that's not how life works. Like, I can't. I don't even know how to like explain it. Like,
Trust me, I'm frustrated too.
I was a dean of students in middle school. Okay, give me a job. Like, no, I'm the GOAT of, you know, I don't even know how to explain it. It's just that guy gets like hits me right here in the chest. Like, that guy just unnerves me so bad. And then for him to say, like, yeah, it was a good fight or whatever, but I would wreck Peter Yan. Like, okay, then come fight him. Like, I just feel like he got out of the division right when Peter Yan was coming up. Like, I can't prove this obviously, but I just feel like it was a big duck. Like, it was just like, okay, I'm the double champ. I'm leaving.
He literally said, "You won't have to hear from me anymore. I'm the GOAT." Which, again, as I think we both agree, I don't know how to count those Olympic gold medals or quantify it. You seem to not even care about it necessarily.
No, I don't. Yoel Romero's an Olympic medalist too. Do we label him the GOAT?
Well, I think he got the silver, but
still, he's in a, so okay. I understand it's not gold, but okay, does that make him second GOAT because he has a silver? Like, no, this is not what this is. You don't get to label yourself, especially when you get a double and then you just say I'm done. You didn't even defend it. Like, you didn't fight anyone. You just said, okay, I'm done. Like, no, you have to defend it. You have to show that, like, you cannot be beaten for a long stretch of time. Like, what even did he finish with his MMA record? Like, in the UFC? Like, do we know?
I don't remember. I don't remember.
It's not a lot of fights. I know that. Okay, so for him to be like, I'm the GOAT. If we're gonna go into that conversation, then just because he has 2 belts, or is he really saying that just because of the Olympic gold medals? Is that literally, or is he saying it because he's the double champ?
Because he's the double champ and the gold medals. But first off, can we at least admit that Demetrius Johnson fight, that first big fight, or I guess second big fight that he had when he beat Demetrius Johnson, can we at least admit that there was a good portion of the population that felt, of like MMA fans who felt that Demetrius Johnson won the fight?
Yes, that Henry Cejudo lost, including me. I'm in that boat. That's why
I agree with you too.
I can't even like comprehend. To me, it's just another grab at like, I need to be a bigger star than I am. You know what I mean? It's just another one of those guys who just needs to be in the spotlight, and he just will run his mouth as much as he can just to be in the spotlight.
And then like the whole wrestling thing too.
It wasn't just like a small minority. I feel like the majority of people thought DJ won that fight. So for there to even be controversy about it, and then for you to not even defend, a double belt, and then for you to bring in the argument that you have Olympic gold medal, I don't know. The whole thing to me is just wishy-washy. And then, like you said, for him to start mouthing, or like I said, for him to start tweeting at Peter Yan after the fight, especially when, like you said, he said, "You'll never have to hear from me again." Okay, I thought that was like a mic drop moment. Like, why do we like?
Let's just see you in wrestling or something.
Why do you need to keep making yourself feel like relevant? Like, if you feel like you're the GOAT, you don't need to back it up. Like, the people and other things will let that speak. You know what I mean? You don't have to keep trying to make yourself relevant when no one's talking about him anymore. Like we're moved on. Like,
is he frustrated at the fact that he's not even being considered? Like, honestly, when we're talking about the GOAT conversation, how many times do we have discussions about MMA and we mention Henry Cejudo in that discussion? I don't think
0.
we've ever mentioned it.
0. We will never, because like I said, for you to be considered the GOAT, look at DJ's run.
Yes,
Look
11.
at the run of excellence he had. Oh, by the way, I want to give a shout out to my waiter. I actually watched these fights at Boston's restaurant in Mill Creek, and my waiter was DJ's training partner.
Oh my God! Yes,
so
yes.
That, I guess,
props.
That made me even a little bit more frustrated, because seeing this guy's frustration with Henry Cejudo was like even more added fuel to the fire.
Clap it up, man. Clap it up.
Yeah.
Clap it up.
DJ's run of excellence was like stupid long and stupid dominant. So Cejudo wants that type of recognition. Go fight some more, and then you can be in the conversation. Like, you can have a seat at the table. Like, I'm not even going to consider you for it yet, to even like have a spot at the table. It's just not.
Here's the thing. Look, if he wants to be considered the GOAT, he has to defend the belt multiple times. He's already got the double champ thing, the gold medal. Sure, I'm fine. I don't know how to quantify it, but it's there. Fine. And then go to one and fight Demetrius Johnson. Let's be honest, he's killing it in one even now. Like, one won that trade. Let's not beat around the bush.
100%.
One won that trade, and his career trajectory, even at one, which, I mean, unfortunately for even us as MMA fans, we don't talk about Demetrius Johnson and what he's doing at one even now, or what he's even done at the UFC, but he's in the GOAT conversation not only from what he's done at the UFC, but also at one as well. Let's be honest.
Yeah, he's continuing his run of excellence. One thing I actually found out was the owner of one is actually a local guy from here too. That's why DJ originally went over there, is because it's his old coach.
Interesting.
That was a big reason why he went to one, which obviously was a little bit sad for us to see as fans, because I felt like him and UFC just fit a little bit better, because you have to wake up at 5 a.m. to watch, a one fight or whatever. So
yeah,
it's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, he's continuing his run, and I just feel like that one questionable at best loss, doesn't take away everything that he's done before that.
Yeah.
Like, there was no one that could touch him in that division. You know what I mean? Like, there wasn't even controversy. Like, it was just like, he's gonna win every fight. Like,
and he's gonna win in incredible fashion too. I mean, he's had some incredible fights, even in that division.
Anyway, Cejudo needs to just take a backseat for a while.
Yeah, for sure. I'd like to see him fight Peter Yan. I think it would be a lot of fun. But again, as Dana said,
to be honest, I think he'd get killed. Peter Yan is like.
Peter Yan's good.
He's the next big. No, I think he's like he's gonna be a problem for a while. Like, he's dominant. Like,
yeah. I don't know. I feel like Cejudo would give him a good shot, but let's be completely honest about this. As Dana talked about, even with Conor last month, if you're gonna say you're gonna retire, like, you're not GSP where you can just come back and get ready to go. Like, I'm sorry, he's retired. Like, stop.
Yeah.
Stop. And then Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway. So before we get
robbery.
hang on.
Oh my gosh.
I thought this fight was close. I thought that Holloway won. But I don't think this is something that you and I have ever talked about, and I think it's important because we saw two split decisions on this main card. We have to have a discussion about what are we talking about between unanimous decision and split decision. Because let's be honest, while I agree with you and I thought Max Holloway won, it was still a very close fight. And it was a split decision. Is it that much of a problem to you? Like, if it was a unanimous decision, I think we would be all up in arms. But the fact that it was a split decision, does that alleviate your frustration a little bit? Like, how do we differentiate this? Because I think that's been a big problem, is we're not differentiating the fact that it was a split decision where it was really, really close to a unanimous decision where it was just Max Holloway definitely being the better fighter throughout. You could make an argument that Volkanovski won and I wouldn't have been mad.
I don't know. I feel like I feel like it just takes some of the heat off of the judges. You know what I mean? If it's split, um, I I I I don't know. To me, this fight wasn't that close. I just felt like they gave way too much credit to like the one or two takedowns Volkanovski had.
Oh, that's what I did too. But I think knockdown. I think that matters a lot to the judges who can take a guy down and keep him down there for a few minutes.
I think it means more in this type of fight where it was, it wasn't like a dominant stretch in this fight. I think it holds more weight. But to me, it was like clear as day that Max won the first 3 rounds. Like clear as day, no question. So just by that logic, like I don't care if he has a takedown in the 5th round. Like it doesn't matter. He already won the first 3 rounds. Like unless Max gets knocked out or gets submitted, like there's no debate. Like you can't outweigh a guy winning 3 rounds and just say, yeah, he had a couple takedowns towards the end of the fight, so that outweighs maybe a round where it was close. That doesn't outweigh it to me. If he wins the round, he wins the round. You know what I mean? Like, and to me, there was just no argument for Volkanovski winning any of those first 3 rounds. Like, yeah, you can say it's close, but
I
like
thought the first 3 rounds were close. I still thought Holloway won the first 3 rounds, but I still thought it was close.
That's what I mean, though. Like, you can say it's close. That's fine. But you still, when Holloway wins 3 rounds, just because it's close doesn't mean the takedown means more. He still won the 3 rounds. You know what I mean?
I guess, yeah.
It's still winning the 3 rounds regardless of how close it is. Which is, I think, needs to be more of the focus is regardless of how close it is, if he wins a round, he wins a round. Like, you're winning more of the fight than the other guy is.
But let's also be honest here and recognize that for it to be a split decision, which it was, some of the judges had to give one of those 3 rounds to Volkanovski. So is that where your frustration lies about probably more so the fact that there are some judges who did feel that Volkanovski won considering how close those first 3 rounds were?
You mean as far as like, well, obviously one of the judges scoring one of those first 3 rounds?
Yeah, because
like
I feel
in Volkanovski's favor?
Yeah, because I think the only way for it to be a split decision and for Volkanovski to win was for one of those judges to give Volkanovski one of those first 3 rounds more so than the takedowns itself.
Yeah, so that's great. I feel like it was more based on the fact that he was the champ. So if it's a little bit close, maybe we lean towards the champ's way, which I feel like we didn't get with the first fight. I feel like that one, Max won some rounds that he didn't get. You know what I mean? And I feel like being the champ, I think there should be a little bit of, if it's really close, maybe we lean the champ's way. Now, whether that's right or wrong is, a separate topic, but I feel like if it is really close and you really are like borderline deciding, you should lean the champ's way. Okay, which we didn't get with the first fight. I don't think. Okay, so the only way to me that you could judge one of those first 3 rounds in Volkanovski's favor is if you were saying, well, he's the champ, like let's if it's really, really tight and I'm 50-50, then we have to go, one way rather than saying like, let's give it to Holloway. He's not the champ. Like, let's have a new champ, which is, I feel like where a lot of the stigma of like, I don't know, favoritism comes from, where like we tend to lean towards the champ's way. We tend to, which is my beef with both these fights is because Max didn't get it. I don't feel like in the first round or in the first fight, excuse me. And I felt like Volkanovski got it this time.
Because I think the point here is not necessarily the takedowns in the last 2 rounds. I think we can both agree that Volkanovski won the 4th and the 5th. But in terms of the first 3, I felt that Holloway won, but I felt it was close. And I felt there was a case that one of the few of the judges, or I guess one of them, made the decision to say Volkanovski won one of those first few rounds, or the first 3. And that's where I think the problem is. The problem is not necessarily the last 2 rounds. It's what happened in those first 3 and how the judges scored those first 3 rounds that really kind of set a fire along this fight for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's just what I mean, though. I just feel like unanimously we all, like UFC fans as a whole, or anyone who watched this fight as a whole, really probably thought it was like, I would guess like 95% of people thought that Max won the first 3 rounds, which is why it's frustrating, because like it wasn't like it was like really, I don't think it was like really debatable amongst a lot of people, the first 3 rounds at least. So, and then you have Dana come out and saying, like, I really am questioning what those refs were like.
The judges
were thinking. You know what I mean? Like, even Dana's coming out and saying it, like, and Dana never does that. So it's
no, he does do that. He does.
Even adds more, like problems with. I don't know.
Even with that, I felt a little weirded out by that, because I was like, and this is probably some of my weird thought process about unanimous versus split and how we quantify it. But even when he came out and questioned, I was like, you do realize that it was a split decision. That was kind of part of my issue. Not saying that I disagree. I agree that Max should have won. I agree that Max won the first 3 rounds. I totally 100% agree. But again, I still preference this by saying those first 3 rounds were still quite close. So because it was a split decision, I thought it was a little strange. Because
I know, but that type of logic is why I feel like it gets in trouble, though, because I feel like you're almost just like allowing these sort of things to happen if you're not nipping it in the bud and saying, like, listen, regardless of it being close or not, like I said, like 95% of people, like it wasn't like 60 and 40. It was like 90, like almost consensus, like people, everyone watching thought. Mm-hmm. So like, yeah, it's split, but like that's taken away from the bigger issue. Like, I just feel like that type of argument just allows this to kind of slip under the rug when we should be like wondering, like, okay, how can you score one of those first 3 rounds in Volkanovski's favor? Like, where's the logic behind that? Which is what we should be asking. You know what I mean?
I think this also brings up a wider discussion, of course, as we've always had, about the judges and how many judges should be there, and it brings up that bigger discussion. Now, let's move on to the main event. Usman and Masvidal. To be honest, you were right on the money with this fight. You're basically right on it, with Usman basically dominating. You said you have a problem with this fight. What was your issue?
Another kind of hot take. I just feel like Usman isn't really a dominant champ to me. Like, yeah, he controlled this fight like through and through. Like, don't get me wrong, he absolutely like dominated this fight. But I just feel like it was sort of like he's just outsmarting guys, and that's kind of what bothers me about him. Is he's not like a dominant fighter where like he's gonna come in and knock you out or like just wrap you up. He just takes what your weakness is. And don't get me wrong, like, I don't want to sound like I'm just putting him down because he's a good fighter, but like the little stuff, like him stomping on Masvidal's feet like half the fight, is just a little bit like bush league to me. I understand he's trying to get advantages and points where he can, because he has to do that so that way the ref doesn't break him up, because he's more or less, he was leaning on Masvidal a lot of the fight, which is why I would have liked to see it broken up, which is also probably another debatable topic for most people, because he is controlling him, but I just want to see a little more of a fight. I don't want to see him just holding on for most of the fight. And like I said, don't get me wrong, he's controlling the fight, but it's not like we're getting a really good fight. You know what I mean? It's a little bit frustrating to watch. I will say he knows how to pick his spots, because with Covington, he stayed up on his feet, which by all accounts, I think Colby Covington is a much better wrestler than Usman. So he understands weaknesses and stuff like that, and he's fighting to his advantage. But it's just a little bit tiresome to watch sometimes. You know what I mean? like I said, him stomping on a guy's feet just so it looks like he's doing something, so that way he can just control. And he is controlling the fight. He's controlling, the pace and everything. He's on top. He's winning the fight. It's not what I want to see from a champ. I want to see a champ come out and kind of impose his style on someone else rather than just picking apart someone else's weaknesses.
See, I have to differ with you on this because it goes away from what the sport is from a technical perspective. The reality is, and I'll be honest, Trevor Whitman and his team, especially for the Rose fight in particular, was really fun to listen to. But even for this fight for Usman, the reality of the matter is how many fights. I mean, to be honest, like if you watch the UFC as heavy as we do, we understand that a fight similar to Usman and Masvidal actually happens more often in women's divisions. Would you agree with me on that? Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, it's fair.
I mean, and that's obvious. I'm just making a point just to say that it does happen more in the women's divisions. It's not anything in particular. It's just sort of an observation.
Yeah.
But looking at the way we view main events compared to a prelim card or whatever, I mean, how many fights a year, men's and women's combined, have fights similar to that one? It happens a lot.
Yeah, a lot.
So then I don't understand. Yes, it's maybe not the most funnest thing in the world to watch when you're, watching a pay-per-view and it's a main event and it's a big fight and you want to see fireworks. I get it. But at the same time, it goes away from the things that I think we really appreciate about the sport. Yes, that might not be the most amazing thing to watch necessarily, but for us who understand the ins and outs of the sport, this is just sort of part of the game. And the technical, then what you're doing if you're complaining about this fight is appreciating the less tech or not appreciating the technical aspects of what makes a fight, and you just want to see fireworks every fight. That's just unrealistic, and that's not what the sport of MMA is.
No, maybe I'm not like wording this right. It's not that I want to see like fireworks and stuff every time. If he wants to get down and wrestle, by all means, I have no problem watching, wrestling. But when he's not even getting, like that many, he had a couple takedowns, but more or less he was getting one takedown and then laying for like 5-10, not 5-10, like a couple minutes. You know what I mean? It felt like 10 minutes. But like I said, I want the champ to get in and dictate and impose his style of fighting, which I feel like Usman doesn't do. He just looks at the opponent of who he's fighting and, says like, oh, he's not good at doing this, so we're going to do this. Rather than him pushing the pace and being like, this is what I want to do. You know what I mean? Because I feel like when you're the champ, I want a certain type of like confidence in there, which I feel like he doesn't portray. I feel like he's a little bit more lax and he's a little bit more. It's not that he's technical, because I have no problem with that, but he's just. And don't get me wrong, like I said, I was watching the fight, and as frustrated as I was with how it was going, I would have liked to seen it been broken up a few times so we could get a little bit more action. I don't want it to sound like I'm saying like I need them standing up the whole time, or I need something to be happening all the time, because I understand, like you said, the technical ability of some of these guys. Sometimes that's what makes a fight. But I just feel like from a champ, there should be a little bit more urgency. I feel like he should be looking to win the fight rather than just coast through fights, which I feel like with Usman we get more or less. Well, outside of the Covington fight, that was the first one I really seen him open up and like fight. Not that just because it was standing up, but I felt like he was pressing a little bit more than he did in this fight. I feel like this fight he knew he could handle him and control on the ground, so that's all he was looking to do, which was my problem from the beginning. Like I told you, I knew he was going to do, because Masvidal by no accounts is a great wrestler. So I knew a lot of steam had been taken away when Gilbert Burns, tested positive. I knew a lot of steam of this fight had been taken away just because of the technical and grappling abilities of, from Masvidal to Burns.
Do you feel so firstly, do you feel that it's because of how short notice it was that Trevor Whitman and his team with Kamaru said, in this specific instance, let's just focus on what we know our strength is to his weaknesses because it was such a short notice fight? Do you think if they had a full camp, the fight would have been a lot different, or no?
No, I think just with these fighters, I think, like I keep saying, what Usman and his camp do is they really understand, like what the opposing fighter's strengths are and what Usman's weaknesses, and more or less that's been him, like standing up and fighting. But I also think they understand Jorge Masvidal has lethal power. You know what I mean? Like we've seen it in and out. So if you get him in a clinch and you can eliminate the space and you can keep it on the ground, it's just neutralizing. Instead of, like I said, him attacking, he's just neutralizing what the other guy does best. And which is what he did with Colby Covington too, which I felt like was a little bit frustrating. Covington went for a couple of takedowns in the fight, not a lot, but Usman did a good job with his takedown defense. So I feel like he's just neutralizing, which is what I keep saying it, but it's my biggest point is he's not implementing any style that he wants to do, or he's just neutralizing what the other guy does best. Now to this fight in particular, I think with a long camp, short camp, whatever, I think they understand, like I said, the lethal ability of Jorge Masvidal, striking ability. So I think, it's smart from his camp, as frustrating as it is, it's really smart from his team and him to be able to understand those things. But no matter how long the time was, I think this would have been the strategy no matter what. I think it was probably a little bit easier for him to do this than like with Gilbert Burns, where he would have had to prepare a little bit more on his feet. So I think this is a little bit easier for him to do because he's very well conditioned and a very good, like I said, he controls fights well if he's on the ground. So I think this is easier for him on a short camp, a short notice to be able to do rather than, stand up and fight.
Do you want to see this fight again under a full camp or no?
No. I just know these two style fighters don't match up. Like you said, we've seen it so many times in UFC, women's, men's, whatever, where we get these different, completely different style of fighters, and we get these type of fights where it's not a main event. You know what I mean? It's good to decide who's going to be third and fourth in a division, but not for a main event.
All right. And then a small pop culture thing that I wanted to discuss is particularly focused on sports games, and I want to focus on sports games in particular with this. But for PS5 and Xbox Series X for NBA 2K21, the price is $10 more. It's $70 for the game. I don't know if this is something that will happen consistently throughout all games. I don't imagine it will be. And I wonder in specific why they're priced at $70, maybe because you also get the current gen game when you buy the next gen game as well. But where do you go in terms of, where's your thought process in terms of 2K and 2K21 pricing it at $70 instead of $60, and where do you sort of draw the line with that piece?
This is something you and me have talked about a lot. I feel like 2K, especially Madden 2, just know they have a certain market that people are just going to continue to buy the game. And I've fallen into this trap a couple of times where it's just like, I'm not going to buy it. It's the same game every year, kind of like we've always talked about. And next thing you know, I'm at GameStop or whatever buying the game. It's just, I think they understand that they have this certain kind of pull and certain kind of gravity almost that they can raise it $10. Obviously, for like you and me and stuff, it's frustrating when they're constantly raising prices. I mean, 60's high for a game anyway. 70's. It's getting to the point where they're just gonna keep boosting up, and it's gonna get to the point where it's just stupid, to pay that much for a video game. I mean, I know it's probably something more you can speak on because I know you like to. It's probably smarter that you wait for these games, a lot of these games to go, a little bit more on sale before you pay like this $70. It's just I just feel like 2K and these like a lot of guys joke about it. You know what I mean? Like I said, like I'm not gonna buy it. I'm not gonna buy it, and then all of a sudden it comes out and everyone buys it. They have a certain gravity to them that I can't really explain. Maybe you can, you know, elaborate on that piece because I don't really know how to put it into words. It's the pull that these type of games have for people.
So, two things that I've thought about. I mean, this is we're kind of coming on this a little bit late, but I was thinking about this over the last few days. So, firstly, UFC 4 was just announced over the weekend before the fights, and it looks really good. I got the beta this week. I tried it out. It looks like a really fun game. And every time UFC comes out, I always think about the same thing. And obviously, this is the last game. This is the last UFC game before they have to potentially renew the contract with EA. We know how UFC is with their rights deals, so we don't know if EA is going to get the rights. They most likely will, but we'll find out. Every time UFC comes out, keep in mind it's a 2-year cycle. They don't do it every year. This is a 2-year thing. Every 2 years, they get a new game out. Maybe at times 3, but I think it's mostly 2, if I remember correctly, from the beginning of this generation. That is a better system because to me, UFC every year, at least when I play, I normally play the beta, and then by the middle of the year, they give like free trials before big fights or whatever. And every time I play it, I'm always really impressed by how the game is developed and how they listen to feedback. Like Ultimate Team's not in the game anymore. It was terrible at UFC 3. They got rid of it. So they listen to feedback more and the fact that it's a 2-year life cycle. And I thought about, okay, what if 2K is on this 2-year cycle? What if Madden's on this 2-year cycle? And that's part of it's an extension of the issue. It's like, yeah, people buy it every year, but I think it would be better if it was every 2 years. And I always think about that every time UFC comes out, where it's like, there's a reason why they don't do a yearly cycle for this game
Yeah,
compared to other games.
you're probably right. I mean, it just allows more time, like you said, to get feedback on the game. But I think it also, I think it obviously eliminates that like I'm talking about like that want of just to get the new one every year, or rather than like it gives them more time to develop it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It allows for more change rather than like they're like, oh, we only have however much time till we have to update it or whatever. So it's just like constantly putting out the same game. It just allows more time for them to be able to, like you said, get feedback, adjust different settings in the game, stuff like that, which is the biggest problem we have with games like 2K.
Mm-hmm. And then like the $70 price point, it's like this is also why I'm trying to figure out if this is something consistent, because if it is, I think it's a bit of a problem. But for this year in specific, let's say for instance, you pick up a PS5 or Xbox Series X in November or December when it will most likely launch. So you pick that up, let's say, I don't know, $500. We don't know the exact price point. We've heard rumors for the PS5. Let's say $500.
Yeah.
Then on top of that, you get 2K. There's another 70. Now, granted, you get both copies of the game. And granted, if you want to get Madden, FIFA, and you bought it at launch, you don't have to buy another copy of the game for next gen. You get it for free. Fine. So that does alleviate some of it. But if you're buying 2K or like other games like that price point just goes up and up and up, more than likely, right?
Yeah.
Depending if you're only a sports game guy or not, you might be spending about, let's say, 500 some. And then let's not forget tax is crazy. So the tax on the entire thing is going to be ridiculous anyway.
Yeah.
So it's a strange year to even do this, to consider doing this, because it's like, okay, why I mean, I get why 2K doesn't want to do the whole upgrade for free thing, because we know 2K when they launch these new console games for next gen, they make it insane. but
Hmm.
then every year after it's not the same, right? The
Yeah.
first game always shows a lot of promise, and then it kind of slows down, and that was the case for this generation. It's it's gone to a point where it's like, okay, well, then how willing are you to spend $60 a year? How willing are you to go through the frustration of it, and maybe even 70? How far is too far, basically? And I mean, that's something for an individual consumer to decide, but it's like, it's different. This is such a different thing than The Last of Us, where you could make an argument, yeah, you should get that, because it's not, it's comes every, like, what, twice a generation. It's not a yearly thing. You can make a substantial argument that that $60 or $70 or however you're spending, depending if you're pre-ordering or not, makes sense.
Yeah, but I
That
think
I get.
that's the most valid point that you're making is if it's on a 2-year cycle, games like 2K and stuff, I think more than willing, people are willing to spend that. But when you're doing it every year and it's the same game, it's the validity is lost. It's like why keep doing that? Which is why I think if it's gonna keep being on a yearly cycle like you're mentioning, it gets to the point where it's not. I think we're almost at that point where it's not worth it. If it keep, if we were to jump up another 10, in a year or two, it would be like, what? No, I'm not paying 80. You know, like
Yeah.
there's always going to be those people that will justify it, but I think you're going to start to see a drop off. Like you said, it's going to keep going up and up and up.
Yeah, and I wonder from their perspective as a company, Take Two and everything, if their perspective is to do this, $70, see how many people pay it. Obviously, there is, and this is something the developers have talked about that I've listened to, where it's like there is a drop off with next gen. You're not going to sell as well as the current gen. It's just how it works, because not a lot of people buy it right off the gate, whatever. But moving forward, if that's the case, and $70, and they still get good numbers, because again, as you talked about, it's a niche market.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to stop them from doing another 10, and then another
Exactly.
10, and then how much? If you want to get the pre-order bonus, like the Mamba edition, that's $100. Imagine if that was 120. Do you,
Yeah.
like, and let's not forget, 2K in particular is really bizarre, because you're not, let's say for instance you get the next gen game and you're spending 70 and you didn't get the current gen game, you have to spend another 100 on top of that just to get a solid experience. If you're playing my player, my career, my park, whatever, you still have to spend another 100 on top of that.
Yeah. That's my problem. The added in-game fees that a lot of these games have now too.
And I think you put a really good point on it. It's not for I don't think this is the case for Madden or FIFA as much, but at
Mm-hmm.
least for 2K, at least for NBA 2K, it is a fee. Like, I'm honest, like, playing my career on 2K without paying a single dime is frustrating at best.
Yeah,
It's just a worse experience.
it is. That to me, you're already charging, a lot for the game, and then you're gonna say, well, if you want to be good in the game, you're gonna have to pay more. Like you said, it's just. I mean, you can always go the route of, like you've talked about, at least in Man, we're like really like going a lot.
Grind mode.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Ultimate Team, but there's a lot of people that don't want to spend like that much like time, like it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of, like
Frustration, let's be honest.
frustration. Yeah. Like I've heard you talk about it. Yeah. Like the frustration that comes along with like trying to build like what you want the game to be. And you just paid $60 for it.
Or in this case, 20 or 30, because I mean, again, I try my best not to get games at launch
Yeah.
anymore. But yeah,
Not you in particular. I'm just saying like
a
in
random person, a random kid who buys it for $60
yeah.
and then just grinds the whole
He
year.
logs on and he thinks he's going to be able to play like, like a decent team, and stuff. And he's like, no, it's not happening. You're going to either pay more money or
Grind it out.
yeah, grind it out.
And then let's keep in mind also with Madden, and I mean, you and I have had the same frustration with all of these games in general, with the free stuff, with the franchise modes. FIFA's
Mm-hmm.
had their issues with career mode, which I'm sure you can speak more on. But of course, the hashtag Fix Madden franchise, I'm sure you saw it a couple of weeks ago. Like, because of all these paid modes now, these franchise modes that we all love, and honestly, let's be honest, kind of play the game for, because after a while, Ultimate Team can get really stale.
Yeah.
It can get really frustrating.
Yeah, definitely. I think they're losing some of what like makes the game, and trying to more market it and make more money off of the game.
Yeah. I mean, obviously with Madden's perspective, the fact is, I've seen some leaked screenshots of Madden 21 and the franchise mode. It's the same thing. I don't know how much they're going to change in a month. Let's be honest, it's not going to be too much. I hope that there's something there down the road that expands it, but and an Ultimate Team I loved Ultimate Team in 17. I played it a bunch. I think, or was it 18? Either way. And then I skipped 19, and then I got back on 20, and I played it for a few months. I've basically finished Ultimate Team. Like, I got tired of just doing solos the whole time, and then really exploring franchise mode. Like, I get some people like it, but you really have to put a lot of effort in to like Ultimate Team. You got to put sliders in. I know for me, I have to do draft classes if I want to do rebuilds to really enjoy it, and even that can get stale at times. So for me, with Madden at least, and I know we can both speak on my league, they put more in my GM, which, let's be honest, no one plays my GM at all. Everyone plays my league. It's just, and my league doesn't get enough love anyway, but it's just really frustrating. But what about you for FIFA in particular? Because I know you play FIFA more than I do.
Yeah, FIFA, I've been playing FIFA a lot lately. Like you said, the game mode for me is sort of deteriorating. I think they put a lot on Volta this year, they tried to market that.
And they didn't, and not a lot of people liked Volta. Keep that in mind. It really was overhyped.
It was really overhyped, but I think they lost sort of some of the, like you touched on with the, like being in career mode. Like, I've been playing, I think, like 5 or 6 seasons now. And if you sign on to a good team, and you're the manager of, like, Man U, or like a dominant club that has some money, like, you can kind of cheese the game like a little bit, and you can, like, they keep funding you, and you can just basically get 95s over your whole team. So it gets to the point where you're just like winning Champions Leagues and stuff every year. But like my biggest frustration, and I mentioned it to you, and you took notice to it too, is like playing in my career on FIFA, and like you have a 55 overall coming to you and saying, "Coach, I need to play."
In the career mode,
every other day, and it's just like blowing up your inbox of just trash players asking to play. It's like, that's my biggest beef with FIFA this year, is that like the keeping the players happy is just terrible.
Yeah. The morale system, for what it's worth, was a good idea in concept, in theory, but in practice it was terrible. And I don't know if you've experienced this. I was meaning to ask you, have you had you're doing a Borussia Dortmund career mode, right?
Yeah.
Just on your own time. And you're in what season now?
I think 5 or 6.
Have you had issues with Champions League or Europa League?
Issues as far as what?
The actual Champions League and Europa League not working at all?
No.
Oh, I'm surprised, because that's actually been very common as you go through the Sims.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a really common problem.
So yeah, I haven't had any problems with that.
Yeah, I'm surprised, because I've seen it. But yeah, in general, I mean, it's just it's these modes like career mode where it's kind of what makes the game. And the fact of the matter is all of these games that we mentioned just don't put enough effort into building it the way they should, because they focus on all these modes where they make a bunch of money.
100%. They're losing what makes the game what people want to buy is, these type of modes where it's more or less simulating, you actually being a part of these franchises.
Mm-hmm.
And they're marketing more of, more or less like beating other people, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Rather than being a part of kind of the experience,
mm-hmm.
which I feel like is, I get it, people want to win and stuff, but there's also something to, being a part of your favorite franchise or whatever.
Yeah. And I think even on FIFA, even when you do like a road to glory or stuff like that, you're also just going to encounter countless issues as well if you didn't start from the bottom and move along, and that can be a long process as well. But I think the conclusion that we're making here is, at least with sports games themselves, considering especially how much fun you can have an Ultimate Team, and it can get stale after a while, and then we know about all these career modes and stuff. It's like you have to really now, I think really really deeply about how much worth is the game to you to
Exactly.
pay $60 a year, or in 2K's case $70. And
Exactly.
it's up to the player to make that decision, but at some point I think people have to start taking away this idea of, oh, I need to get it every year just because there's a big feature. And yes, I imagine that we will all get excited for whatever 2K21 is going to look on next gen. But let's be honest, we're going to be hype about it. But as with Volta, for example, even though we're going to be excited, how much hype is that going to be? Is that only going to last the first months of the game and that's it?
Yeah.
So is it really worth the money? And I think this is something that an individual gamer has to decide for themselves. But it's something that I think I've really focused on the last few years. Okay, is it really worth the money? Because for me, when I'm gaming, it's about how much money did I spend on the game? Like, I spent $20 on Madden this year. I can tell you I got that money's worth just from playing it for 3 or 4 months because I spent $20. If I spent $60, I don't think I would have that same thought process, because I think by this point of the year, I don't think I would. It'd be hard for me to really have fun with it,
Yeah.
even though we're in quarantine, right?
I mean, there's definitely, yeah, like you said, kind of a timeline for it and what price point and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I think the simplest conclusion here that I guess I'm trying to make, and I know we've had discussions on this endlessly as well, it's like, for you as an individual gamer, if you just have to look at the money and see, okay, based on how much time I'm going to spend and how much enjoyment I'm going to have, is it worth the money? And if it is to you, whatever price point it is, then yes. But if it's not, it's probably best to wait a while
Mm-hmm.
than anything else. Do you kind of agree that that's sort of our conclusion here?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's more than a fair analysis. I tend to agree with it. Yeah, I think it's becoming consensus though.
No, it's getting closer, I think.
Mm-hmm.
All right, man. Great show today. We'll be back on next week. We'll figure out that timetable for next week for you to come back on. But it sure will be fun as it was today. So thanks for coming on, man. I'll be on tomorrow with Shane and Brandon, and we'll cover a bunch of NFL news and all that stuff. So thank you again, Cole, for coming on. It was great.
Yeah, as always, it was really fun. I always appreciate you having me on the show. Great stuff today, and good luck on the show tomorrow. I just want to mention one more time to our viewers. I'll have the flag up there for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Oh my God. That flag will always live in infamy, especially after that.
I know our viewership loves it. Got to keep it rolling for them.
All right, man. I'll see you next week. See you all.